Welcome back, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you. I'm Michael from Richucation. This is our second day of our 7-day series, and we're going to talk today about the most important skill that you will ever learn. And that's a big claim. That's a huge, huge claim. In fact, I just wanted, before I talk about that, I want to mention something to you, which is this idea of skills. And I include this in our curriculum. It's a big breakthrough for me, which is, we talked last time about taking action and the importance of having the clarity and understanding that will motivate you to take action. We talked about rhythm creates results, which is going to be this theme for us as we go through each day, and is generally a theme in Richucation in general. But the question is, what are the barriers to taking action? One of the things I noticed for sure that gets in people's way, I was talking to a girl last night, and she was saying she'd love to start a business, but she doesn't know what business to start. She doesn't know how to start a business. Not knowing becomes a barrier to doing. And unfortunately, a lot of people get into this position where they say, hey, listen, I don't know, and that stops them. I don't want that to happen to you. What we're going to discover is, in this day, we're going to really focus on this process of learning, because it is the foundation of achieving predictable success. All right, you can be lucky. It is absolutely true that luck exists. You can go and buy a lottery ticket and win $1 million. This happens to some people. But you can't do that predictably. You cannot rely on that. And so if you really, really care, as I care, and as I've cared, about getting the life that you want predictably, you need to have a predictable path. And the predictable path really comes from learning, really comes from mastery. And that's our subject today. Our subject is mastery. Gaining mastery of the critical skills that are going to get you there. Now, here's the interesting thing. Mastery is not knowledge. And sometimes people make that distinction. Mastery is skill. And skill is doing. So I'll give you a really easy example that you can probably relate to. Think about when you learned to ride a bike or learned to speak a language. Did you read a book about it? You might have. Probably not, just based on the way we learn. But reading a book might have helped you, can give you some good insights. But do you know how to ride a bike when you've read a book on riding a bike? No, of course not. You don't know how to ride a bike until you've ridden a bike. That's when you know. That's the doing, that's the skill part of it. And with all of this stuff, it's not just about reading a book or watching something. It's about doing it and then tweaking the process. Is trying it give you the skill? No, trying it actually doesn't give you the skill. When you first learned to walk or something, right? You stood up, you tried walking, and you fell over. You didn't know how to do it. Or maybe you did. If you walked on your first time, congratulations. I certainly didn't. I don't know how long it took me. I'd have to ask my mom. But the point is, trying isn't what does it. It's actually going through that cycle. And again, this is where rhythm creates results. You're going to try. Something's going to happen, you're going to tweak it, and you're going to go back. And you're going to go back, and you're going to go back. And when you have the support to help you, that can accelerate the process so much. So, really, if you want, we talked last time about, okay, what do you have to do? You have to change your behavior. Well, what do you have to do? You have to know what behavior to change and what to change it to. That's where that knowledge and skill comes in. That's what we're talking about here today. So, coming up in the next 5 days after this one, we're going to talk specifically about the skills related to wealth building. It happens that mastery, although it is necessary for predictable wealth building, has way broader implications than just wealth building, which is awesome because watching this video, I know for me, when I first learned some of these distinctions, it helped me with my squash game, it helped me with doing all kinds of different things that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And I really wish in school they had taught me how to learn. Because there is a predictable way that we get better at something. And you probably related to this. Okay, here's the example for me. I was in high school, and I was on the badminton team. I played badminton for, 2-3 years. I never got very good. Even though I played, fairly regularly. I had the same thing in band class. I was in band, since from grade 7 to grade 12, 6 years. And yet, I never got very good. Because going through doing it doesn't make you good at it. There's a specific process, and we're going to talk about that here today. So, if you want to go out there and you want to be successful, coming back to the story of the girl who wants to start the business, really, it doesn't matter that much what business you go into. What matters is you become a master in what you're doing. And if you just think about this, if you're world class in pretty much anything, there's value in that. So for example, if you were a world class piano player, is there value in that? Absolutely. World class in music, somebody will hire you, you can get some sort of a position. I have a friend who's the head of an orchestra. Is it fantastic? Not necessarily. It's not, necessarily going to make them rich, but there's a place for that in the world. BMX. I saw a video the other day of the fastest cup stacker in the world. Cup stacking. I mean, come on. This isn't that big a thing, but it attracts views on YouTube, and there's a whole little space for this. So yes, it matters what you choose, but not that much. Most of the time, if there's a sufficient market of people who are interested in it, and you're really, really good at it, there's people who are going to come to you. Maybe it's personal training. Maybe it's something to do with health, with diet or something like that. Maybe it's something to do with music. Maybe it's something to do with entertainment. Maybe it's something to do with writing great stories. Are there wealthy authors? Absolutely. Maybe it's something to do with martial arts. Maybe it's something to do with nursing or education. We're doing Richucation here, right? Any field, gardening, home care, anything, right? Decorating, whatever. Things that, practically anything, if you get really good at it, there's a space for it. And then we're going to show you how to take that expertise and multiply it to make it into a real wealth-building channel. So that's where I want you to start. I want you to start by writing down and figuring out what is it you're really world-class at, which most people won't be. Okay, so let's realize this. You won't start out world-class, and that's okay. I'll tell you about when I started my second company. My second company, I told you last time, I had quit my job to go and get into, to try and pursue travel. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I spent about a year hanging around at my parents' house. I got a part-time job and I did writing in the evenings. And eventually somebody came to me and they said, hey, I have this business idea, I want to talk to you about it. And I hated the idea. But I started to think about how it could grow into something, and that excited me. And so I said, okay, let's do it. At the time, I knew nothing about it. It was a recruiting company. I didn't know it was called recruiting. I didn't know there was a recruiting industry. I thought I had invented this. And that's a ridiculous idea if you know anything about that space. But I talked to a friend of mine and I told him, I'm like, hey, isn't this a good idea? And he said, design group. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, design group. I'm like, no, I don't understand what you're talking about. What are you saying? He says, design group. Here, go check out this website. And I did, and sure enough, it was this recruiting company. And I eventually years later, ended up meeting the founder of this company. Not that many years later, a few years later, who was one of the wealthiest men I'd ever met at the time. He owned a big office downtown, and it was one of the most successful companies in the space in the country, and he owned something like 17 other businesses. And at the time I got in, I knew nothing about it, and I was really embarrassed about this. When I'd had my first company, my computer company, I'd had a client that was an employment office. It was like a government-sponsored thing, and I was asked to go in. Well, I'll tell you first. So people would ask me, they would say, hey, listen, Michael, did you have any prior experience in recruiting? Do you have a background in HR? And I was embarrassed to say to say no, because I was trying to attract business and be credible and things like this. And so what I would tell them is I would say, oh, well, I briefly managed an employment office. Briefly was this client had asked me to come in for one day while they were out of town to watch the office so that things would be all right. That was my briefly managing an employment office. And I tell you that just to say that, you can really start from nothing. So today, if you don't have something that you're a master of, and you probably don't, realistically, most people are not world-class at something, and you should aim to become as good as you possibly can at it. That's really important. If you're not, then the question is just, where do you see an opportunity, or where is something that you're curious about? And if it turns out that there's none of those, you can't think of anything, which a lot of people, when I was talking to this girl yesterday, she said, I don't have anything. I was like, yeah, you do. You're just not used to thinking of them that way. I know for a fact that you're interested in health. I know for a fact that you're interested in wellness and, learning to craft your body and things like this. And so if you just start thinking about it, I want you to take a moment right now to just think about, A, what is it you're really good at? And that might be, dealing with people and helping them to get over issues. Things that you think of as soft skills that you don't think of as like a business or something like that. Don't worry about it. Just pay attention for now to what are you an expert in, or what would you like to become an expert in, or what do you have kind of a curiosity and interest or see an opportunity in. And if you can't think of any of those, if you're totally blind to it, then the thing that you should pick is marketing. And the reason is that marketing is the single most valuable skill that you can pick up that we can help you. And through Richucation, you can blow it away. Fantastic, huge opportunity. And then you can learn to market whatever field you're interested in later. Does that make sense? All right. So you're going to have to develop some mastery. And probably no matter where you're at, you're going to need to learn to develop some skills. And regardless, you're going to want to learn how to build money-making skills in there, which is a completely different thing. That's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the skills of building wealth, the skills of becoming rich. And it just happens there's 6 of them. The first one is, how do you learn? So let's delve into that. Now, it's really simple. Okay, and this for me was life-changing. There's a fantastic book. I recommend you pick up either of these. One is called Talent is Overrated. The other one is called The Talent Code. And they talk about research they've done on top performers. And they've found that these people aren't born with this natural talent. That's not what happens. What happens is they develop it. And it's not just through practice. It's not just through doing it. Remember I was talking about going and playing badminton. You probably have had some similar experiences, haven't you? Some time where you've done something a bunch and you're like, I just can't get this. And the reason is there's a very particular way, and people struggle at different stages, but research they've done have found when you break through that struggle, you catch up to the people who are farther ahead. So that's good news for you guys. Now, how does this work? It's pretty simple. You set your goal of what it is that you want to try and get to, you want to achieve. Then you try it. And what we want to focus on here is we want to be process-oriented. What does that mean? It means I'm not focused so much if I'm playing golf on getting a hole in one. I'm focused on paying attention to how do I hit the ball and hitting it properly. If you do the process right, the result will follow. So focus on the process, all right? If you're learning language, instead of, paying attention to having a full conversation with somebody, pay attention to pronouncing that word right. Break it down. So you're going to try that. Now, almost inevitably when you start, you're going to fail, okay? You're going to try this thing, you're not going to get it. But this is where the important thing comes in, is you need to have some very accurate and rapid feedback so you can identify where you're going wrong and how you're going wrong, all right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to break it down into a smaller piece, you're going to slow it down, and you're going to just try slowly to get it right. And you're just going to tweak that process until you do, and when you get it right, now you're going to put it together and you're going to speed it up until it becomes fluid and natural for you. And really that's how you've done everything. So for me, if I could go back and I could do badminton again, what would I do? I would sit there and I would learn, I would practice, okay, how am I going to hit this thing properly? And I would just practice doing that. Instead of playing a full game, I would just focus on this one skill. Then I would do another skill. And when I was doing something wrong, I'd break down a certain part of that. Maybe it's like how I do the backswing. I don't know what the details are for badminton, but hypothetically, that would be the case. If I was playing chess, I would like to play chess, and I'd maybe focus on the opening. What are my opening moves, and what am I considering? Now, here's the thing that you're going to run into, almost inevitably. And this is the number one thing I want you to remember about this skill, all right? You're going to ask the question, or at least I would ask the question, how do I know what to do? How do I know how to swing it properly? I've never swung it properly. And so here's the answer to that. And every time, I want you to remember this, every single time you're in a situation where you don't know, become obsessed with learning, and then go and look at this one point. I wrote it down here for you, which is copy successful people. Now here's the thing that a distinction I want to make, because I'll hear a lot of people say something like, never take advice from somebody who doesn't have more money than them, or take advice from somebody who's not more successful than you. If that was the case, Tiger Woods wouldn't have a coach. But Tiger Woods has a coach. All the top athletes, I guarantee you, have coaches. Bill Gates would have nobody to listen to about money. But the reality is he's listening to people all the time. It's not that you should not listen to somebody or not learn from somebody who doesn't have more than you. It's that you should copy somebody who's more successful than you. And the person who's teaching you should be taking the example of somebody who's more successful. All right? So, for example, if you were to go, who are you better off learning from? Tiger Woods, better golfer, or Tiger Woods' coach? Probably his coach. Oftentimes, the people who are the best teachers and can give you the most value aren't the best at it. But Tiger Woods' coach is going to be getting you to copy Tiger Woods. Does that make sense? Does that concept flow for you? Hopefully it makes sense. So, copy successful people. This is the thing when I'm working with people again and again, if they come to me about marketing or something. It's like, okay, what do we have to do? We have to find an example to copy. When we're building, say, websites, I was helping a good friend of mine recently with getting some banners designed and websites designed. And rather than going out and trying to do it, I'm like, here's what you're going to do. You're going to find some reference, and you have somebody who you already know is doing a good job, and you're going to copy them. Is that the be-all and the end-all? No. Eventually, you're going to get to this point where you go to such a level, you accelerate your success, and you're going to innovate in that field. But that's not where you start. Where you start is by copying someone successful. Warren Buffett calls this coattailing. And he talks about how it's the most valuable thing you can do is just ride off the coattails of somebody else. So he started by learning from people like Ben Graham and whatever the other guy's name was. Anyway, those are things that are really important. If you look at, Bill Gates reads like 4 hours a day to this day. Steve Jobs went and got somebody who he learned marketing from. He learned from negotiation from some people. On and on and on. So copy successful people. And so right now, here's your exercise. You've got down that you have a skill that you're going to learn. And particularly on top of that skill, you're going to learn a second skill, which is going to be how to make money at it, how to build wealth at it. Now you have to identify somebody successful to copy, and here's the good news. Okay, you might ask, you might say, okay, well, I don't know anybody. That's fine. You have good access to those people. You have access to books. Your books can be your mentor. One of my most successful friends, such a young guy, he's very successful, he said when he started out, he couldn't afford mentors. And so what did he do? He went and he got books because he figured for $20, he could have the author of that book as a mentor. Number two, you have YouTube videos. So if you want to learn how to, hit a tennis ball or something, go and watch tennis videos. And the best part is, the most world-class people are the easiest people to find when you start looking at this. In terms of wealth building, that's what we have Richucation for. Richucation is so that we can help you, not only by providing the model of how to get there, but also providing that ongoing instruction and tweaking, the kind of feedback that you can't get from a book, right? So, for today, go out, identify what is the skill that you're either good at or want to develop. And by the way, let's say you're in a position where you've already got some success. Fair enough. If you've already got some success, you probably already know the value of learning. And you can probably learn deeper. So the question then becomes, what is the skill that would help you the most in order to get to the next level? What's that gap analysis? And we're going to talk about the 5 skills of wealth building, beyond this first one, over the next 5 days, ending with perhaps the most powerful and most overlooked, which really is the one that will create massive freedom for you. And I'm excited to share it with you. It's going to be a really, really big deal. Go out, have a fantastic day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have some rhythm, create some results.